Hi, third graders. Miss Rondo here. I hope everyone had a nice weekend. And I'm really excited because we're going to start doing a read aloud every day here together. I know that I've had a lot of time on my hands over the past few weeks, and I got a chance to watch one of my very favorite movies. That's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And then I found out after I watched Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory that it's also a book written by a really talented and creative author named Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl has written tons and tons of children's books that are very funny and silly and adventurous. And today, we're going to start reading one of those books together. We're going to start reading the story Fantastic Mr. Fox. Something that good readers always do before they start reading a book is they try to figure out what the genre is. I already have some clues about what the genre of Fantastic Mr. Fox is just by looking at the cover here. I see a fox on the cover. That fox is wearing a jacket and he has a sack over his shoulder. Do foxes really wear jackets and put sacks over their shoulders? No. And then if I was to just open up the book to any page, I find that there is tons and tons of dialogue, meaning that characters in the story are talking. Those clues tell me right away that the genre of this book must be fiction. We know here at KIPP that when we read fiction books, we have some thinking jobs that we have to do. We have to think about who the characters are, what the problem is, how the problem is solved, and what lesson is learned. Character, problem, solution, lesson learned. CPSL. I might not learn all of those things today when I read because we're only going to read a few chapters, but that's what I should be thinking every day when Miss Rondo or Miss Walsh reads this story aloud to us. Character, problem, solution, lesson learned. Okay? Our question that we want to be thinking about today, though, is how do I describe the main characters? I can think about how characters are described based on what they're doing, their actions, what they're saying, and even how the narrator and the illustrator shows them in the story. So I want to think about how I would describe the characters. I'm going to do a few out loud with you, and then you're going to actually get to do some of the thinking on your own as well. So it's time to get started reading Roald Dahl's Fantastic Mr. Fox. Chapter 1, The Three Farmers. Down in the valley, there were 3 farms. The owners of these farms had done well. They were rich men. They were also nasty men. All three of them were about as nasty and mean as any man you could meet. Their names were Farmer Boggis, Farmer Bunce, and Farmer Bean. Boggis was a chicken farmer. He kept thousands of chickens. He was enormously fat. This was because he ate 3 boiled chickens smothered with dumplings every day for breakfast, lunch, and for supper. So I'm going to stop for a second. I'm going to think about how I would describe Boggis here. I already know the author told us that he's very rich and he's also very nasty. And then looking at him here, I know that he is enormously fat, is what it told us. I know that he is a chicken farmer. And I also know that he really, really likes to eat those boiled chickens. So what do I know about Boggis here? I know that he's rich. I know that he's very nasty and mean. I know that he's a chicken farmer. And I also know that he is enormously fat. Bunce was a duck and goose farmer. He kept thousands of ducks and geese. He was a kind of pot-bellied dwarf. He was so short, his chin would have been underwater in the shallow end of any swimming pool in the entire world. His food was donuts and goose livers. He mashed the livers into a disgusting paste and then stuffed the paste into the donuts. This diet gave him a tummy ache and a beastly temper. So now I want to think about Bunce. I know that in the beginning of the story, it said that all 3 farmers were rich and they were very nasty and mean. So that goes for Bunce too. I know that he's rich and he's mean. I also know that he's a duck and a goose farmer. I know that he's very small. I can look at the picture, I see that he's very small. And I also know that he has a really, really bad temper because of all the food that he eats. So I know that he has a bad temper, he's very small, he's a duck and goose farmer, he's very rich, and he's very nasty and mean. Bean was a turkey and apple farmer. He kept thousands of turkeys in an orchard full of apple trees. He never ate any food at all. Instead, he drank gallons of strong cider, which he made from the apples in his orchard. He was as thin as a pencil and the cleverest of them all. So if I think about Bean here, I know that he is also rich and very nasty, just like the other two farmers. I know that he is very tall and thin. I know that he doesn't really eat food, but instead he drinks lots of cider. And it also said that he was very clever. Remember, clever means that he's very smart. He can think about things really, really well. So that's how they describe all three of the farmers. Bogus and Bunce and Bean, one fat, one short, one lean. These three horrible crooks, so different in looks, were none the less equally mean. This is what the children round about used to sing when they saw them. Chapter 2 is Mr. Fox. So during chapter 1, I stopped and I described the three different farmers. Now it's going to be your chance to think while I read about how you would describe Mr. Fox. So think about what he looks like in the pictures. Think about what kind of things he's doing and what he's saying. And then at the end, we'll get a chance to talk about how you would describe Mr. Fox. Mr. Fox. On a hill above the valley, there was a wood. In the wood, there was a huge tree. Under the tree, there was a hole. In the hole lived Mr. Fox and Mrs. Fox and their 4 small foxes. Every evening, as soon as it got dark, Mr. Fox would say to Mrs. Fox, "Well, my darling, what shall it be this time? A plump chicken from Bogus? A duck or a goose from Bunce? Or a nice turkey from Bean?" And then Mrs. Fox had told him what she wanted. Mr. Fox would creep down into the valley in the darkness of the night and help himself. Bogus and Bunce and Bean knew very well what was going on, and it made them wild with rage. They were not men who liked to give anything away. Less still did they like anything to be stolen from them. So every night, each of them would take his shotgun and hide in a dark place somewhere on his own farm, hoping to catch the robber. But Mr. Fox was too clever for them. He always approached a farm with the wind blowing in his face. And this meant that if any man were lurking in the shadows ahead, the wind would carry the smell of that man to Mr. Fox's nose from far away. Thus, if Mr. Bogus was hiding behind the chicken house number 1, Mr. Fox would smell him out from 50 yards off and quickly change directions, heading for chicken house number 4 at the other end of the farm. "Dang and blast that lousy beast!" cried Bogus. "I'd like to rip his guts out!" yelled Bunce. "He must be stopped!" cried Bean. "But how?" said Bogus. "How on earth can we catch the blighter?" Bean picked his nose delicately with a long finger. "I have a plan," he said. "You've never had a decent plan yet," said Bunce. "Shush and listen," said Bean. "Tomorrow night, we will hide just outside the hole where the fox lives. We will wait there until he comes out. Then, bang, 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 bang." "Very clever," said Bunce. "But first, we shall have to find his hole." "My dear Bunce, I've already found it," said crafty Bean. It's up in the woods, on the hill. It's under a huge tree. So before we started this chapter, I told you that your job was to be thinking about how you would describe Mr. Fox. So what I want you to do now is I want you to pause the video and think about how you would describe Mr. Fox. You can leave your description in the comments below. Once you think you have your answer about how you would describe Mr. Fox, you can press play again on the video. So again, you're going to pause the video, think about how you would describe Mr. Fox and leave it in the comments below. And then once you have your answer, you can press play on the video. Good luck. All right, friends, so you just had a chance to think about how you would describe Mr. Fox based on the things that he did in the story, based on how things that he said, and also how the narrator and the illustrator showed him in the book. So how I would describe Mr. Fox is, I know they said he was very clever. Remember, clever means that he's very smart and very kind of witty, so I would definitely use the word clever to describe him. I also know that he's a provider, meaning that he gets lots of things for his family. He's the one who goes out and he finds the food for his family. So that also shows me that he cares about his family, both his wife and his kids. And that being said, if he has a wife and kids, I know that I could describe him as being a husband and being a father. I also know that he's very kind. I know that he's kind because he's going out and he's getting all those things for his family. So that's how I would describe Mr. Fox. Okay, so today we read the first 2 chapters of Fantastic Mr. Fox, and we thought about how we would describe those characters that we met so far today. Tomorrow you're going to get to read the next few chapters with Miss Walsh. We already know this is a fiction story, so as you continue to read with Miss Walsh tomorrow, remember to be thinking about our characters, our problem, our solution, and lesson learned. Bye, friends.